Welcome to Kakov Media Podcast. Welcome to Zakinova Team Podcast Room. And right now we're going to start. I want you to present yourselves.
Sure.
You guys amazing too. Very powerful individuals. It really takes a lot for me to aim to get the right people in the room. And you guys will just showcase what you're made of. So Ruben and Solomon, please present yourself.
Sure.
The company and your role.
Well, I appreciate you putting all this together, Olga.
Of course.
I know it's been a long time coming. I also want to give a special thank you to Kakov Media for allowing us to record and air this, of course, amazing podcast in their podcast room. So thank you to everyone. I also want to give a special thank you to your husband and Gabriel, who really put a lot of things together. I mean,
Thank you.
I got to tell everyone that's listening, these podcasts are not easy to put together.
No.
A lot of time and effort are put into it.
Yes.
Yesterday we recorded a preview. Last night we were reviewing, a bunch of questions and kind of discussing which direction we want to take this to. So thank you so much for all the time that you've put into it. I am Ruben Izgulov, managing partner and co-founder of WeLend. WeLend is a private lender. We lend nationwide. At this point, we're in about 47 states. We lend to real estate operators and investors. Since inception, with of course God's help, we've originated and funded about $600 million across, I would say, about 1,300 asset classes. It's not easy to do, right? But thankfully, we have an amazing team that's able to do it. Now, while we've deployed $600 million, I'm very proud in saying that we have never lost a penny. Every single loan that we've ever originated, we got every penny back plus some, right?
Wow.
And that's the beauty about what we do, and I'm sure you and I will go into a little bit more in detail on it, but that's a little bit about me, about the company, and I, of course, would love Solomon to introduce himself as well.
Awesome. Olga, thank you so much for having us, and thank
Sure.
you, Kakov Media, as well, for the studio. My name is Solomon Sulamanov. I'm head of originations at WeLend, also a partner. I think Ruben pretty much touched up on a lot.
Sorry for taking it all from you, so I apologize about that. But, Solomon and I, we are also cousins. Our parents are siblings.
Wow.
So, although we're cousins, we view each other as brothers, right? Our grandmother, may her soul rest in peace, always made sure that when we introduced ourselves, and if God forbid we introduced ourselves as cousins, she would kind of smack us over the head and say, "You guys are not cousins, you guys are brothers."
Oh, wow.
Right? So that brotherly love that we have really, I think, is one of the biggest reasons to our success at WeLend today. So, Solomon, you've been obviously with us since day one, and I got to tell you that we wouldn't be able to accomplish a lot of what we've accomplished without Solomon being a part of and head of originations.
Well, amazing. I hear so many wonderful things about both of you, and Gabriel is really obsessed with both of you. And it's very important, I think, to have great role model when we raise our children. And I think one of the gifts that I possess is to very well matching people and houses.
Yeah.
I think it's just like you said, when God made you, He gave you certain gifts.
He sprinkled
Yes.
some of the podcast love
And
into
one
your
of the
heart.
gifts, thank God, Baruch Hashem, I possess is that I'm very good at matching people and houses.
Right.
It's just
And that's-
something that I enjoy.
And that's what you did when you called me and you said, "Look, Ruben, we've known each other for so many years. I've seen WeLend grow since inception, right?
Right.
And I think you should really speak to my son and probably employ him, bring him in. He's going to be an amazing
Addition.
asset to your team."
Right.
And I got to tell you, you hit it on the head, right? I
Thank
mean,
you.
he is a powerhouse.
Thank you.
He works very hard, and like I said yesterday, I see where he gets it from.
Thank you. Well, mom and dad, and I have to give it to my husband also. He gives me the chance to do what I do.
Yeah.
He was never in big approval of what I started doing 2 years ago. I shared this with you, the personal moments. We went through a lot. But now I think he just already kind of gave in.
It's working. It works.
And he let it go to the point where he allows me to really feel and enjoy what I do. Because when I communicate with people like yourselves,
Right.
that bring value and money and anything valuable to the community and to people as a general in whole, he feels my passion. I can't just do this all by myself. I need to really do this with bringing everybody together so they could see it and feel it, the value of what really plays behind everything. So in the end of the day, yes, it took me a while to bring you guys into this room, but I want to really begin by asking you a couple of personal questions.
Sure.
And then we're going to dive deep into business questions.
Oof.
All
I'm
right.
excited.
Ready? Let's go.
do it.
So, Ruben, I know that many years ago when you first started, you started this operation from ground zero.
Right.
Where the passion came from?
So look, I mean, prior to launching WeLend, the four of us, the three of us, we were really kind of buying, selling, flipping, developing real estate throughout New York. So our core markets was Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, Staten Island, a little bit of Nassau, Suffolk County. We were essentially buying physically, financially distressed properties, repositioning them, and then ultimately reselling them or refinancing them with long-term capital. A little after law school, Moses and I, who's one of our other partners, he's not here today, but he is head of underwriting, crosses every T, dots every I in every loan that we originate. Him and I just wanted to get out of New York before I started studying for the bar exam, which I'm sure you know it's not easy, right? I mean, it's manageable, it's doable. There's a lot of lawyers in our community today, but it's a really tough exam. So I said, you know what, let me get out of New York. Let me get out of this, this mess that I'm really going to get myself into, and let me head out to this conference in Arizona. At that time, it was called the Pitbull Conference. If you remember, Solomon?
Yeah, of course.
It was the Pitbull Conference run by Leonard Rosen. Today, it's rebranded to the National Private Lenders Association, which I actually sit on the committee of, on the committee on. And we went in there as private investors and developers. We walked out as private lenders. I mean, we've never looked back since. And the reason why we really repositioned ourselves from developing and fix and flipping and into lending is mainly because of the attractive returns that you're able to achieve through a debt fund, but also most importantly, the security that you're able to actually get with it, right? Being a private lender, you're the last one into the deal, but you're the first one out. And that is very, very important. Now, with the security, you're also combining it with very attractive returns. And I think that for us, the four of us at the time, was really what attracted us to the space. And we've, like I said, never looked back since.
Awesome. When did you guys come together? Right away from the beginning?
So, I mean, we were always together, right? I mean, no matter what we did, I think even before we launched WeLend, I was working with my former brother-in-law. At the time, we were doing loan modifications many years ago. And, Solomon and Moses were essentially, I mean, what were you guys doing over there? You guys were just having a lot of fun, obviously, coming out to Brooklyn, taking the subway, getting away from home. But I don't even remember what you guys were doing over there.
We were doing cold calling. And at that time, I hated cold calling. Yeah. I remember that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you guys were in both sales.
Both in sales.
And I remember, you're right. You actually really, really hated sales.
Yeah.
And now, thankfully, today he's head of originations at WeLend, right? I mean, what a big difference, right? He went from A to Z, from 0 to 100, as Drake says, right? Overnight. So I guess if you work hard, you try hard, you'll succeed, right?
Absolutely.
That's exactly what you did.
Yeah, no, for sure. You got to apply yourself. But yeah, I remember it's 2010.
Yeah, 2009, 2010. And then that kind of led us into buying, selling, flipping, developing, because now we knew how to really kind of, I would say, nurture and find and mine for data, right? And that's very important. And even in today's WeLend's culture is mining data, being able to find, at that time would-be sellers, right? People who were
still
at that
is.
time. Yeah. Still, yeah, it's very important, right? I mean, today, thank God, with all the technology and AI, of course, disrupting the space, there's a lot of other ways of getting it. You don't have to mine it the way in which we used to mine it back in the day. Yeah. But that was a huge one of the reasons to our success, right? Was being able to mine the data. And we were really looking for people that were in foreclosure to try to modify their mortgages and help them kind of reposition their mortgages. And then eventually kind of led us into buying, selling, flipping, and developing, because we use the same kind of business idea and strategy to start buying and flipping properties.
Amazing. How did all this passion begin? Like, you went through a lot of seminars, classes. Did you guys go together, individually?
There were no seminars.
Yeah, I mean,
at that time.
Yeah, there weren't. I mean, they were related seminars for our space, right? So we made sure to, and I give my wife a lot of credit for this. I mean, at that time, you and I and Moses, we were traveling. Even today, like, I travel probably twice a month, right? And it's not just like a one-day travel. You're traveling, to Texas, to Arizona, to California, to sometimes other parts of the world, right? Other parts of the world. And the only reason why you're doing that is because you're able to find people, like-minded people, that actually know your business, that understand your business, but also the people that you can work with. Today's strategy at WeLend is multi-strategy, right? It's We make our loans and then we ultimately sell them in the secondary markets. Or we make our loans and we hold them on our balance sheet through our credit facilities that we have with some of the banks that we've actually met at these networking events and conferences that we've attended, which costs an arm and a leg, but we've attended those conferences. But you're also able to find these same funds that buy our loans today that are backed by Goldman Sachs, KKR, Blackstone, and alike at these conferences. They're not going to call you, right? I'm sure you probably experienced the same thing. They're not going to call you. You have to go out and find them.
Right.
And, being able to go out to these conferences, spending the time, dedicating your time, putting in the energy into it really, really comes into fruition. And I'm sure you've learned also outside of, by being able to sell the loans, you've also probably learned a lot in those conferences.
Absolutely. There's definitely a lot that we learn, especially about what, the market trends, the type of properties that people are buying, what's just happening in the market in general.
What's a good loan from a bad loan?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, how to underwrite, how to cross this T, how to dot this I, and stuff like that.
Well, that's mainly for Moses. But on the sales side, it's a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
That's you going out there and you mingling with people that are looking to buy these properties, that are distressed, and how they can position themselves with working with us, and the type of loans that we're originating for them. So there's a lot.
Speaking of loans and the types of loans, can you guys dive deeper into how many different programs, what type of loans?
When we originally started, we literally had one program. It was that was the fix and flip program for a 1 to 4 unit residential type properties.
We perfected that program at the time.
Oh,
right?
we
did an amazing job on that. But
So today, thankfully, we have, I would want to say, roughly around 8 programs. The main core still is the fix and flip program today, but we also now are able to finance projects that are a lot larger, so ground up projects for our borrowers. Along with, so a lot of these people, what they do is they have one strategy, but then they also evolve into other strategies, right? So we have some borrowers where they started flipping one property, and now they've built their portfolio. Now they're like, hey, you know what? Rather than flipping properties, I want to hold on to properties. So what we started doing is that we see that we're like, all right, we need to pivot into getting them loans that they can hold on for not just 12 months, which are these fix and flip loans, now into these 30-year loans, which is made for real estate investors, and it's not a conventional loan. So now we're able to offer them a DSCR loan as well, which is huge, and a lot of people have been loving it and are able to build their wealth through that as well, where they're able to put in, multiple properties into these loans.
Great to know. I didn't know that.
And just to Tad, expand on that a little bit. The DSCR is debt service coverage ratio loans, right? So a lot of our borrowers, what their biggest challenge is that they don't really have clean tax returns, right? They're not as mortgageable as, say, as someone that's working for a W-2 employee job, right?
Right.
Most of our, I would say 83% of our borrowers are experienced operators who are full-time in the real estate business. So they can't just walk into Chase Bank. They can't walk into, say, Bank of America or what have you to get a loan. So not only do they need us to bridge them when they're purchasing the property because it may be that the property is just not mortgageable, but they also need to be able to take out our loan through a 30-year product, right? And that's where the DSCR comes in, where we're not really looking at their personal tax returns or their income. We're looking at what the property is actually generating. So we're asset-focused versus borrower-focused. Obviously, the borrower always plays a huge role in the entire...
Borrower is the one that's paying off.
Oh, of course.
Correct.
I mean, we take a very deep dive into the borrower.
We do.
But, the asset is really what we, I would say, primarily focus on.
Yeah, and all these loans are all asset-based loans. So for us, the key is making sure that the asset that they're purchasing is profitable and it's generating them income, and it's not a losing deal. It's a profitable deal, and I think that's what has helped us all these years, making sure that we have zero principal loss.
Thank God. I mean, look, thankfully in our space, the one fortunate part, I mean, there's a lot of good things about it, but the biggest fortunate part about what we do is that we're always collateralized, right? Every loan we make is always a first lien position, collateralized by the real estate that we're lending against, but most importantly, in addition to that, personally guaranteed by the borrowers that we lend to. And what we pride ourselves today is that our borrowers' net worth, and we check their net worth, right? They have to provide us personal financial statements, right? We pull their credit. We do a deep dive in their background just to make sure that they don't have any kind of crimes, any kind of foreclosures, bankruptcies. We take a deep dive into all that. And the main reason why we do that is because tomorrow, when we're lending and we have to take back an asset, if they default on our loan, we have something to take back, right? Because we're a first lien position collateralized by the real estate and personally guaranteed. Now, the point that I wanted to make was that today, most of our borrowers are high net worth institutional grade borrowers, right? So their net worth, I want to say on an average is right around $3 million, but our loans to them is on average of about $800,000. So they have a lot more to lose than they have to gain when they borrow from us.
Right. But mentally and emotionally, when you get to that level, you definitely want to step up, not go backwards.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm sure, Solomon, we just spoke about something very important that's so dear to me,
you
right?
guys connected.
Yes.
I love it. You guys connected on a different
yes.
level. And I was sitting here silent. That's the first time I was silent.
Yes,
So
you're like, what's numerology? And I'm like,
I was trying to play with it. So I was like, oh, yeah, I know what numerology is. And I was like, all right, they're going so deep into the conversation, I have to ask, what is numerology?
Wait, give us another 2 hours. But I think that also helps a lot to select, to sense, to understand where is the borrower's intentions are going. Because if you're only in it for just a one flip, it's probably not your client.
Right.
But if you're focusing on doing this as your life and your lifestyle, then this is probably your client. And this is what I'm also helping right now my son, who is in that field, to really start going wider into like investors' portfolios and really focus on generating their data, their personal data, where we on personal levels could connect with them. Maybe we could kind of like get together and bring them all into the same room and create events. I mean, we could definitely do so much just by having that thought. But having the really good intuition, knowing who to work with, who to lend for, I think it's significant. And it's definitely God's given talent. Solomon, I just have to highlight that. Going backwards into the difference between hard money lending and cash advance. I know there is flow going on right now. It's very stylish, very, very modern terminology that's going around. The cash advance. A lot of people that I know now, especially young kids, they're getting into this cash advance. So let's talk about this a little bit. In details.
I want to speak in reservation and with caution
with
in
respect
mind,
to
and
your
with
colleagues.
utmost respect to my dear friends, who many of them who I know on a personal level are doing the right thing, right? But there's a lot of groups out there who are not. Fortunately, some of the people that are very close and near and dear to me, for example, Mark Davidoff with Approved, they are doing the right thing, right? There's a few others that I can think of. I'm just not sure if they would be okay with me kind of publicizing their name, but most of them are doing the right thing, but some are not. But the main difference between, hard money and cash advance, and, today at, me being at the NPLA on the advisory council there with some of the titans of the hard money private lending industry, we're trying to even move away from the terminology used as hard money. We're trying to really position ourselves into private money. But me being in the space for so long, I mean, you as well, it's hard to move away from something that you're so used to saying over and
private
over and
lenders,
over.
maybe?
Private money lenders,
lending,
right? I was about to say private hard money lenders again, but private money
The
lenders.
word hard, I think it's what people
It kind of brings
get
like that
scared of.
loan sharking atmosphere. But nevertheless, look, regarding the cash advance industry, the main difference is, one, the cost of capital, right? We're all lending to businesses. All our loans are business purpose loans. So our loans today are they're not non-consumer loans, right? So we don't lend to someone that actually is going to be living in the property. We only lend to investors.
So let's highlight, no primary residence.
Ever. Right. And the main reason to that is, in the event that we have to take back a property, we don't have any consumer-facing laws against us as a lender, right? So what that basically means is that instead of us having to foreclose on a property in New York, as an example, for 5 years, as a private lender lending on a business purpose loan, it will take you maybe about a year to maybe 2 years at most. But the main difference between cash advance and private lending is really, one, the cost of capital, but also the collateral, right? A lot of times, what cash advance, folks, they bet on is the, confession of judgments, or, the equipment that they're lending on. The problem with that philosophy and that idea is that if I am a business owner, we'll use a restaurant as an example, and I go under, and you just lent me $200,000, right, at this high, rate, but you've just lent me $200,000, and I go belly up, what am I going to do? I'm just going to shut down my gates, take my equipment, sell it, and get out of there, right? Get out of there as fast as I can. So realistically, as a lender, as a funder, as they would say, you have nothing to really go after. Right, you have no collateral to really kind of attach yourself to and try to recuperate not only your money, but most importantly your investors' money, because you are a steward of their money. You are a fiduciary for your investors. You want to make sure that you're always able to recuperate every penny that you've deployed. So that's really the major difference, right? Because we as private lenders lending against real estate, yes, we have the personal guarantees similar to their confession of judgments, but most importantly, we have real estate. So, we're not in the business, and I know you and I, Moses, we've made this decision a very long time ago. We're not a lend-to-own shop, right? There's a lot of private lenders that really lend to really take back the property, right? Because again, there's a lot of money to be made. And I say this jokingly, but when you and I just entered the space, and I remember you and I were together at this bar, and we went to a conference, I think it was in Texas. And one of the groups that was kind of the same size that we are today, they were managing, I think, about 150 million at the time. I asked them, I said, look, you're managing 150 million, if you remember this. I'm like, why don't you buy real estate with it? You have so much capital to deploy.
I remember.
You should buy real estate with it. And they said jokingly, well, I don't know if they were joking about it, but obviously it was a cocktail party at the time. They said, yeah, we do buy real estate, but only for 60 to 65 cents on a dollar. Yeah. I didn't understand that. I was like, okay, I laughed, played along. Now,
Makes
so
sense.
many years later, almost 7 years later, and deploying $600 million, I now realize that what they meant is that if they have to if they have to take back a property, their basis in the loan that they've made is so healthy that they're basically taking back the properties for 65 cents on a dollar. And that's what a private lender in the real estate space has the advantage against the cash advance world, is that we always have collateral to recuperate the money, not only for our money, but our investors' money, which is the most important part.
Great. So do you guys only deal with experienced investors, or do you guys have a lot of startup new teams maybe that are starting off from scratch?
So that's the beauty of it. We're able to work with experienced guys. We're also able to work with first-time real estate investors as well. And we've also seen many of our first-time real estate investors be able to grow their portfolios from maybe just doing one flip a year when they were just doing it all cash, maybe now to doing 5 or 6 flips on an annual basis, right? So we're there to help both first-time investors and experienced investors as well. We have no issue with that at all. I mean, we recently actually also just increased our leverage for our first-time investors because we've seen them completing their projects so successfully that we're like, hey, we feel more comfortable giving them higher leverage towards their acquisition and then still giving them construction money. Would we want to lend to a first-time investor that's doing a full gut renovation in a property? Probably not. We don't want them to do that. We want them to take baby steps initially, right? So get into a deal where it requires rehab in the kitchen, or rehab in maybe the bathrooms. Yeah, just
Windows.
the basics. Correct.
The basics.
And then from there, they'll be able to graduate into doing larger deals. And that's how we have a few borrowers today where, they started doing regular fix and flips. And now today they're doing conversions, right? Because I think a lot of us already know that having a regular fix and flip deal today just does not work. The numbers don't pencil.
Right. No, you have to think outside the box. For
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
So what a lot of these guys are doing is they're buying up, a 2-family home, and they're doing expansions, right? So they're adding an additional floor to the building, and they're converting it into condos.
I've seen some of your videos.
Yeah.
And I do love them.
Yeah.
Because then you're showing a true example. And I think
Exactly.
this is how I got into the video world. A lot of people were questioning me, what do you want to become an actress? I'm like,
Why not?
That's the Baharian
no,
mentality, right?
No.
They just
well,
don't-
you and I spoke about it. We're going to dive deep into that part a little later.
Sure.
But everybody stay tuned. If you like what you're seeing, just subscribe to our channel. We're going to share a lot. But yeah, so people were questioning me, like, what's with that whole video dynamic?
Right.
Because personally, I am not a big fan of buying things online.
Yeah.
I like to go and I like to feel and I like
Feel
to
it,
see and I
touch it,
like
see
to
it,
touch.
smell it. I
And the
agree.
same applies to homes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I could have never sold a house virtually online. I know during COVID, a lot of agents were very successful selling houses to borrowers that were getting 2-3% loans, and they were just selling them online virtually, getting them into contract, and then we'll do home inspection and everything
Crazy.
else after you get into contract. Like, no, not doing that. I'm staying home until it's open officially.
right.
And that's how I got into Long Island market, because the government said, oh, Long Island, you can operate now,
Right.
and then you have to wait in Queens. I'm like, oh, okay, very
I'm
good.
outta
I
here.
figured it out. I'm too quick. Okay, so that's where Gabriel gets it
Yeah.
from. Quick learner, right?
No, for sure.
So that's how I got into Long Island market. But going back to investments, I feel like people need to see it. People need to feel
Yes.
it.
Right.
People need to believe it. And then a lot of homes that we're dealing with, they have tenants occupancy. I'm dealing with one right now as we speak. The mother was living in the
squatters.
house. She actually was not part of the will. The
Oh, man.
daughter got the property.
Ugh.
The daughter had to go through probate. And so, can you imagine? The grandmother skipped one generation. She gave the property to the granddaughter. She had to go through probate process, right?
Yeah.
And now the mother ended up where? On the street.
So she didn't give it to her daughter. She gave it to her
She gave
granddaughter.
it to her granddaughter.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure there was a history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is that now I kept telling the daughter, you can't just kick your mother out on the street.
Right.
You got to offer her something.
Well, New York, yeah, you can't do that. I mean,
Okay.
look, we have a building that we own in Brooklyn, and we have this one tenant that hasn't paid us in 5 years.
5 years.
5
Squatter
years.
now.
Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. 5 years.
Well,
at this
because
point.
New York allows it.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough. Thankfully, we have other cash flowing, properties
doesn't
and
affect it too
businesses
much.
where we can manage. But what happens to the
One.
For example, your client, right? I don't know if there's
Bleeding.
a mortgage on it or not.
Bleeding.
But even if there's not, there's still maintenance
Yeah.
to the property,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's still some kind of carrying costs, property taxes, insurance. How do they manage?
It's falling apart.
Exactly. Well, guess what happens, right? What really happens in those situations is exactly what and I don't want to go political, but what the political sphere in New York is trying to prevent from happening, which is those same borrowers or owners of the properties, they end up defaulting.
Yes.
Right? And what ends up happening is that they go into foreclosure. They end up
Yes.
actually losing the property
Yes.
at the foreclosure
Doesn't make any
auctions.
sense, right?
And what they're trying to protect is really what it kind of leads to. Now, I promise not to get political, but I think that it's tough as not only an investor, put an investor aside, as an operator, as a mom and pop operator.
As New York City
to
homeowner.
really,
Yeah.
Exactly. So one of the things that we do as an example is that if we can't get access into the property when we do an appraisal, then to us it's like a sign that there's a squatter in the property. And internally, one of the risk mitigating tools that we do is that if that does happen, if we see that right away, we reduce the leverage. So even if it's like a superstar borrower who would qualify for 90% leverage on the acquisition, 100% of the construction, we would still probably reduce the leverage by about 5% just because we couldn't get access. Now, most of the time, the borrowers are never going to tell us, hey, there's a squatter in the property, right? They're just going to say, oh, sorry, I really wanted to get you in to the
There's
appraiser.
no access.
There's no access today. The guy left with the keys. I don't know where he is, just doing exterior.
No.
To us, that's a sign, right? So, you're right. I think your client should pay the mother. I think she should try to tread that very carefully because
She held off for 8 months.
8
And
months is
now
not
when
bad.
there is no other choice, when it's a 911 situation, who do you think they call?
You.
Hey, Olga, can you go there and talk to my mom? And I have very soft spot for elderly.
Yeah.
It's something maybe to do with my past life, but I have very, very soft spot for elderly. Of
course.
And when I walked in, I asked her, what do you want? And of course, my investor said, can we give you 10,000? And she looked at him and she said, that's insulting.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, looking at him like, time out. Before you
Get
get
out-
thrown out
get
of
out-
here,
get out of the house, right?
before you get thrown out of here, we better offer her what she's already telling you
Right.
that she's willing to accept. And in this case, it's 40,000. So we will pay her 40,000.
Great deal.
Let her have it.
Yeah.
You know what? I believe
a home run.
let her have it, because we cannot put an elderly person on the street, asking them to wander around. What do you think would happen if it goes to court?
Right.
I speak to numerous landlord-tenants attorneys before I even proceed to knocking on the door.
Yeah.
And I ask them, what do you think it's going to take to evict something like that?
Yeah.
Up to a year minimum.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
least a year.
So what's more important? 1 year and a waste of all this time
Yeah.
and the taxes and the insurance and everything you need to be responsible, which is going to drag your equity, right?
Right.
Versus just paying her 40,000 and moving on, pay off all your debts and have a good life.
I think you got away very easy for $40,000. I mean, look, I'm sure your investor
Have you seen?
is
Have you
going to
seen
bake
more?
that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
We've always
a lot
seen
more.
more.
I mean, at some point we offered, and I'll be open about it. We offered our tenant, right? I mean, she is a seasoned squatter. She knows what she's doing. There's no doubt about it. I mean, our attorney, he's great, but there's just so much that they can do. And I know that you had a landlord-tenant attorney here a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Who was also amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
But there's very little that they can do. And what we've offered our tenant at that time, well, now today is squatter, was a large sum. I think we offered her up to like $75,000. That's what we ended up going up to. And you know what she responded with? 75,000 won't cut it. I'm like, why? Her name is Sue. God bless her. I'm like, Sue, why? And she said, because I'm going to keep you here. I'm going to stay here for the next 3 to 5 years. And if you do the math at $2,500 a month, and that was 5 years ago, right? I'm not even talking about the step up in the rent. She said, if you do the math, I'm going to save a lot more over a period of 3 to 5 years than you're going to pay me. So I'm going to be sticking around. Right away, I realized, all right, there's no negotiating with this lady.
Wow.
It is what it is. We'll just take a loss on it and move on. And that's exactly what we did. We're hopefully going to be at the warrant is issued. We're just waiting for the sheriff now to kick her out. So hopefully next time we're going to be on this podcast, I'll give you an update on it as well.
They're actually trying to change that law right now.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, they're trying to change. So there was a situation popped up like a few months ago where there was an heir. Somebody passed away, so she got possession of the property. And somebody caught wind of it and started squatting in the property. And she came in and she's like, who are you? He's like, this is my house. I live here, I have a lease. Yeah. He already had the Con Edison bill. So these guys are professional squatters.
They really are.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they do. So, yeah, she ended up calling the cops. The cops weren't able to get them out. But eventually, they had a court order. They got him out. I think within like 30 days.
I remember seeing it like on Instagram.
Yeah.
I think it was on
New York Post.
Community,
I didn't see
Post. I remember seeing that a year ago or so.
But I also have a borrower that I spoke to 2 weeks ago, who has a 6-family house in Park Slope. I think it's Park Slope. And with the new zoning, I think what is it called, a 1035X? I forgot what it's called.
958 or something like that. 458.
Yeah, 458X.
458X or something.
So he's able to now convert that property into condos, and he's able to add an additional floor. He has like 3 tenants that living there that are rent stabilized tenants. So he offered them, I think, $300,000
a piece.
$100,000 a piece.
Oh wow.
$300,000 total.
Oh wow.
To move out. He's like, yeah, I offered it. So I followed up with him. He's like, yeah, listen, they didn't even take that. They're like, it makes no sense.
They weren't even willing to consider it, probably.
Because they're living there. Right. So like,
right. I mean,
so in your case, when you guys are dealing with free market condos, for example, or something that is rent stabilized, rent control, how do you guys manage this type of investments to those that are having interest to buy them?
So for rent stabilized, rent controlled buildings, we try to only lend to seasoned, as we call them, superstar investors, people that have experience with these type of tenants. And I would say we become, not extremely, but we become a conservative on the leverage. So I'd want to say we would go up to like maybe 60% of what the as-is value is of that property. I think in the past 5 years, those properties have depreciated in value a lot. I think over 50%. And there were larger banks that unfortunately had to shut down because of that, because they were only primarily focusing on rent stabilized, rent controlled buildings.
Look at Signature Bank as a perfect example.
Exactly.
Right? It went belly up. That was one of the biggest reasons as to why it did, right? Is because they were the go-to term lender for rent stabilized, rent controlled. And when, all these new laws protecting, rent stabilized, rent controlled tenants came out, the values of that real estate dropped by like, you hit it on the head, like 50%. So what happened? I mean, that means their balance sheet now is upside down, right? Signature banks. And that's when the regulators came in and just kind of, I wouldn't say shut them down, but kind of basically ousted the entire team, forced a sale to New York Community Bank, right? I believe it was. And now New York Community Bank, who was, I wouldn't say forced to buy, but it was a now they changed over to Flagstar, but they bought that paper, right? They bought all those loans, majority of the loans that were on their balance sheet. Now New York Community Bank, who is now Flagstar, if you listen to their latest earnings call, they are having trouble, right? And the whole trouble is behind the real estate in New York that Signature Bank originally originated, right? Wow. So it if you look at Florida as an example, I mean, I know you, God willing, are planning to move to Florida, but the reason why Florida has flourished the way in which it has, and most of the I would say New York investors and operators have moved there, is because it is investor friendly.
Yes,
right. But it also enables tenants to it's tenant friendly as well, in the sense that like tenants like living there because there's protection there for them, right? You and I were talking about the crimes in the areas that we live in, right? I mean, it's rampant, but there are protections in place in Florida that don't exist here in New York, and it's a leveled playing field for both real estate operators and tenants.
It has to be a fair deal to both.
Yeah. Well, Florida
And-
has its own issues today.
Yeah, it always does.
Yes.
So
Well, now that they are in a position where every condo has to pay anywhere between $10 to $20 to $30,000 in assessment fees.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what's driving right now a lot of homeowners to sell them for peanuts and moving to Texas, North, South Carolina, other states that are Las Vegas too. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people are moving in that direction. And now Dubai.
Well, I think Florida's having even a larger issue where people are not even able to sell these properties
Right.
or
Yes.
these condos. So we recently actually, so what we like to do with the risk, mitigating risk, is making sure that we're on top of the market trends and what's going on in the country,
Right.
Because we're lending in 47 states, so we need to make sure that we understand what's happening in all these markets. So Florida being a hot market and the issues that they're having today with the assessments, we pretty much stopped lending on condos in Florida until we can figure out what's going on there.
And the insurance too.
I think what
And-
he just said is critical, right? You know, remember we on the We Lend side, We Lend Debt Fund side, we manage a lot of friends and family money.
Right.
What he just said is very important. We stopped lending on condos in Florida.
Wow.
What that basically means is that if I'm not comfortable deploying my own money into Florida, I'm not deploying my friends and family money
Yeah.
either, right? You know, because we are invested alongside our investors. So we stopped lending in Florida because we feel that it's too high of a risk for us to lend there, right? So while it's very important to understand that, you know, again, the laws are very favorable for both tenants and investors, but we stopped on condos. And the reason why is what you just said, but also if you look at Florida's like history, right, over the years, it always sees like these fluctuations. And we just don't want to get caught here,
Yes, and
right? When
then-
it goes, right,
Right.
that
It's
is,
scary.
regardless, we didn't reduce leverage there. We
we stopped
lending
Right.
there, right? And that's huge.
Do you guys have offices in all 47 states?
No, we don't. We haven't. We have two offices in the New York City area. So one in Midtown and then one in Kew Gardens, Queens. But to go back to the Florida thing, right? I think it's so different now than it was in all these other cycles.
Right.
Now because people are not just buying vacation homes or secondary homes, they're actually moving there to live.
Right.
And you have
I
all
agree.
these big
I
banks
agree.
moving there
It's more
too.
permanent than it was before.
Exactly.
Right. No, I agree. And all these hedge funds
Yeah.
are moving in there and private equity funds. Some of the groups that we actually sell our loans to, they're based out of there.
Right.
Some of the groups that we, you know, co-invest with are based out of there. Headquartered.
Yeah.
They don't just have like an office, fly-by-night office. They are headquartered there.
Right.
How do you guys acquire new blood of flow of funds?
Talent? Oh,
Fun-
funds.
Funds.
It's a very loaded question, but I'm happy to take that one. I mean, look, there's a lot that we have to do, right? And one of the things that I personally do is I attend a lot of events, and I've mentioned that before. You know, I sit on a few panels, I sit on a few committees, attending these events. You know, look, there's a lot of friends that I know that also attend events for, you know, whatever businesses they're in. But it's very important to attend events with a purpose in mind, right? So like when I go to an event, I already know what type of event it is, right? So if it's let's just say a broker event, right? A real estate broker event, or if it's going to be a lot of real estate investors who are basically our borrowers, I'm not going. Solomon is going, right? But if I know there's going to be a lot of like private equity, debt funds, hedge funds,
Then you go.
private, you know, banks that can basically give us warehouse lines or what have you, that's when I go. But when I go there, I don't just go and hope that I'm going to meet the people that I want to meet. I get a list of all the attendees, right? Every single one. I make sure to call, you know, or there's apps sometimes, and I go through the list, and sometimes there's 1,000, 2,000 people attending it, right? And you got to go through one by one to make sure who you want to meet. So when I get to this conference, I don't just hang out and wait to meet someone, hope that God sends me someone, you know, and I'm sure he will, but I make sure to go there with a purpose, and I go there, and Solomon will attest to this, my calendar is filled. I have a bunch of 30-minute interval meetings with a bunch of these hedge funds that I know are essentially buying our loans, that I know can potentially co-invest with us. Now, going there is one part of the piece of the puzzle, right? Having the right structure is another. And, you know, we're very proud Baharians and, you know, Persians, right? Yeah, I know. But we're both, right? I mean, but we didn't structure We Lend in a Baharian way. And I don't mean that in any facetious way or in any, you know, condescending way. We've structured it really in a I'll say it plainly, in an American way, right? Where it's a white kind of structured firm where, again, I'm an attorney, although I don't practice, this is all I do. But we've spent probably right around a little under $100,000, probably like around $75,000 just structuring WeLend, right? And the reason why we did that is because we want to be able to employ and provide the transparency and the protections that our investors, who are near and dear to me and to Solomon and to Moses, the protections that they need, the transparency that they need. But also, most importantly, we know where we want to go, right? We have a long-term vision with WeLend. We don't have the short-term mindset and viewpoint on WeLend. We really want to be able to take this company to a different level. And the only way that we can do that is by being able to structure in a way that the groups that we're selling our loans to, or the groups that we essentially partner with, would appreciate.
Wow. That was very
That was
deep.
a lot.
That was very
Sorry.
deep. No,
I
that's
could
good.
just go on for
No,
hours.
no,
So you
that's
got to
great.
stop me from time.
No,
You gotta,
no,
Yes, I'm gonna start
like
nudging you,
Ruben, like,
like,
No,
listen,
no,
I
no,
gotta
that's
talk
great.
something.
You're giving so much great valuable information. So about $75,000 just in systems.
Right.
Can you just go back there one more time
Sure.
and kind of like
So
unpack that?
Yeah, we look. There's the way in which we could have done this. We could have probably spent about $1,500 just forming an LLC. But instead, what we did is we retained a securities exchange, an SEC attorney, right? Just to give them a shout out, Gerasi. They're based out of California. Great group of guys. We essentially formed a 506c Reg D. It's an exemption through the SEC. And the reason why we did that, again, is to be able to provide the protections that our investors need. Some of them don't even understand it when we try to explain it to them. And when I send them, the documents for them to sign, they call me right away, Ruben, why are you sending me so much documents to sign? I know you've been elementary school. And I'm like, look, I have to, right? This is the way it's structured. And that's why we ended up spending $75,000. It also took us 4 to 6 months to put together.
Yeah.
Because there's a bunch of bylaws in there. There's a bunch of policies, procedures. What happens in this situation? What happens in that situation? So we literally have I would say, the laws into the way in which we operate our business, and it's all outlined there. And it's about a 100-page document just for the explanation of how we operate the systems, the policies, and the procedures.
So that's for someone to become your investor.
Correct. To invest alongside us in the loans that we originate.
What's the minimum investment number that you're looking to?
So today, the
Acquire.
the minimum investment is $250,000. I think the average is right around. It always fluctuates right around $600,000 or something like that. And thankfully, I would say majority of the money today is friends and family. We have some borrowers that actually invested with us because they know how detailed our underwriting is, how deep we go. So like, hey, you know what? The way in which you just underwrote me and my file and my partners, I can trust and sleep easy knowing that my money is with you. So we have some borrowers that have invested with us as well, but mostly friends and family, and even some brokers. I know we had a broker that invested with us recently from Connecticut. So thankfully, we've been doing amazingly well. The fund has been formed and live for probably about 3.5 years now, give or take, and we have been consistently providing very attractive returns in double digits, mid-teen
Can you disclose
returns.
the numbers?
Sure. It depends on the investment amount. It depends on whether you're reinvesting your distributions
Let's say
or
$1
not.
million.
It's returning anywhere between 10 to 14%. That's with monthly cash flow, right? So what that basically means, and it's instant. What that means is that you're not investing into
So that's
a
better
deal.
than stocks.
Look, stocks have the upside, right? Potential upside or huge downside of losing 100% of your money, right?
Right.
But the upside in stocks is that there's just no limit, right?
Right.
Here, we are charging a fixed rate to our borrowers. The borrowers are making fixed monthly payments to us. So it's a fixed kind of rate of return, but the returns, they vary depending on whether you're in reinvesting, depending on what your investment amount is, what class you're in, but it's anywhere between 10 to 14%. The good part about it is that it's instant, meaning that, when our investors, our borrowers, they buy something, they have to fix it up. They have to then eventually rent it. Then they have to sell it or refinance. And then whoever their investors are in their deal, then they get the cash flows from the property,
Right.
which sometimes could take 9 months to 18 months
Yeah.
for them to actually realize a return.
Depends what they do.
Exactly. And with us, the good part about us is that they get instant cash flow. So if you invest on, say, the 1st of January, usually by the 15th to the 20th of February, which is right around this time, is when they would be receiving their distributions, their first distribution. And that would just be consistently directly deposited into the investor's bank account.
That's very attractive.
You ready
Very,
to
very
invest?
attractive. Definitely, we will talk about it. Definitely. Going into the part of building and constructions and renovations, do you guys also invest into, let's say, someone who is buying a property? It could be a completely knockdown, but the zoning there allows you to build. I don't know if you lately watched my videos. I'm really getting into all of that because I have seen Briarwood. Don't go too far. Just look at Briarwood and Jamaica alone. Look where it's unfolding. And right now I have 3 big projects that I'm, acquired from one of my clients who wants to move and sell, actually liquidate all his assets and move to and really deal with real estate in Dubai. And that's how I actually met some of the developers that's representing Dubai market at the conventions. So going back into this type of investors, some of them want to liquidate and walk away. Some of them want to acquire and really take it to the next level. Some of the properties we've seen right before our eyes, where it's like 2, 3, 4, 5 family, depending on the lot, the zoning converts pretty frequently. A lot of my builders and investors that are dealing with this, like when I hear it's just amazing how Jamaica is transforming into the next Long Island City.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Long Island City, when I first came 30 years ago, used to be all just industrial,
Yeah.
everything that used to be like junkyard, right? And now it's like all these beautiful condos right by the water and across the street from Manhattan. And now everything is transforming right before our eyes.
Right.
We live during the most beautiful time of our lifetime. We spoke about it yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Our ancestors would die probably to
For the
be
opportunities,
experiencing that moment that we are experiencing. But do you guys also invest with such projects where it's like knock down, great zoning rules?
Yeah, I mean, look, I want to say this, kind of cautiously because of, the fund that we manage, but, we do make investments. We try to make investments where we are direct, right? Meaning that there's no partner outside of, who we choose. So we don't invest with our borrowers, but we'll buy projects from here and there. I think, out of the 1,300, 1,400 loans that we originated, maybe 5 of them were for us, right? Majority of them were for direct to the borrowers. But even when we lend to ourselves, we lend to ourselves with the same standards and guidelines as we would to anyone else. So the answer to your question, high level, is would we ever partner with someone? Probably. Have we? Very, very few and far in between where we've actually partnered with someone.
So majority of your clients is investors that flip and
exactly
fix and flip.
So it's mostly debt
No
that we
developers.
provide. Yeah.
So I mean, we're entering into that development
World.
development world. So now we're lending on ground up construction. Now we're also dabbling in multifamily ground up as well. Because again, right, like the regular fix and flip world is pretty much slowing down right now. And a lot of these guys are transitioning into doing either multifamily ground up or getting into conversion plays. So we're able to do that, and we've already done a few of those type of projects.
Yeah, because look, today the deals don't pencil out the way in which they did back in 2008, 2009, 13, what have you. Our borrowers, most of them, really have to start thinking outside the box. So, what are they doing? If they're buying a single, and I think you just did a video about this recently with one of our dear friends and also borrowers now, who took us a very long time to convert to be our borrower, but we did it. Nevertheless, he bought I think it was a 2-family house, a brownstone in Brooklyn, and then now he is converting it to 3 condos, right? That's very important,
I've seen
right?
the video.
Yeah.
And then there was another one that we've just recently originated a loan for, who's actually from my shul, House of Torah, Jamaica Estates, by the way. We're also, by the way, just a little plug for them. We're building a new shul on Surrey. It's going to be amazing. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to do good things in that shul, in the sense that we are building a mikvah, we are building a basketball court, we are building a catering hall. We're building a kollel,
Stage.
all
Build a
in
stage
one,
for us.
all in one shul, to be able to provide what the community really, really, really is
Needs.
missing.
Nice.
So back to the point of our borrowers. So it's
When is it
very.
going to be completed?
So we broke ground, I think, this week. We started breaking ground. We finally got all our permits and everything. We just broke ground, and I hope by 2026 we'll be done. I mean, with God's grace and assistance. But I think the bottom line today is that the market has shifted where our borrowers have to do exactly what you said. Start thinking outside the box.
Right.
They start looking at deals where, if it's a 1-family house converted into a 2-family house, they have to look at a deal that's a house that's a 1,300 square foot convert it to or put a vertical extension, a horizontal extension, and make it 3,000 square feet. And we like those type of deals, right? Because now we know that the operator is yielding a much higher return, and the after repair value is going to be much greater, putting us in a much safer position. Now, that doesn't apply to everyone, though, right? Like, you would be cautious to lend to someone who is a new investor trying to convert a single unit to a 2-unit, right? Or trying to do a vertical or horizontal
You don't want them
extension.
to get stuck with building department permits.
Yeah, they definitely will get stuck.
Yeah,
right.
it's
and
inevitable.
There are lenders out there that do lend to these people, and I would want to say
They lend to own shops. They're
Yeah,
not like, operators like ourselves. Yeah.
they are loan to own shops. And then I probably would get a call, or one of our account executives would get a call, and these people are stuck in their project. Like, hey, can you refinance us out? Like, sure, let's take a look at the deal. And then the second we get into their experience, they've never completed a conversion before. Like, hey, sorry. It's either you have to partner with someone that has the conversion experience, that has gone through this before, or we're just not able to, to lend on it. And there was actually there was a scenario where we were all in a meeting with Moses, and then this person came to us for a loan, never completed a conversion before. It was a deal in Brooklyn. We were sitting and we were chatting, and he's like, you guys made the right decision not lending to me. And we're like, why? He's like, I'm stuck in the middle of this project right now. And clearly the lender's also stuck, because now the lender's money is stuck in this project as well. Right. And the guy's never completed a conversion before.
So, what he just said is, again, just as important as the Florida example, right? Yeah. We didn't go to the borrower who doesn't have the experience in converting a single unit to a 2-unit, right? To this same borrower. I don't know who the borrower is. What we did is we denied the loan. We just said, hey, it's not for us. We're not we don't care even if we give you 20% leverage, which means that if you're buying it for $1 million, we're only going to give you $200,000, which means that you have $800,000 of equity. We don't even want to deal with it because, our investors today, they really want that consistent cash flow coming in. They don't want us to, have to lend to someone, then take back the property and wait for us to finish the renovation, flip it. We're not in that business, right? We're in the business of continuing to receive monthly checks directly deposited, to our account and then ultimately to our investors' account.
What's the quickest turnaround you've ever experienced? From the moment they buy it to the moment
they flip it?
Yeah.
That's a very good question.
What I remember years ago, and this was a very lucky guy, he bought a property in Bayside, I remember. He bought a property on, I think, on Monday. And that Wednesday, he started doing the renovation. The next door neighbor knocked on the door and said, hey, I'm marrying off my daughter in about 3 weeks, and this would be a perfect house for her. I want to buy your house. Whatever strike price they did right there. But the borrower who borrowed from us sold the property for exactly what his ROI was expected to be within a matter of like a week or 2 weeks. So that was a very, very fortunate and lucky scenario. Very, very few and far between that actually happens. Yeah.
But I think on average, our borrowers on these loans for about 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
The quickest you'll probably see maybe is going to be like 2 to 3 months for someone to complete a project. But in today's market, it's completely different because now there's so much heavy construction that's involved. Mm-hmm. It's taking these guys, 12 to 18 months to complete and sell out.
Just to highlight, you guys are lending the money for them to buy.
Yes.
And then you're also giving them 100% to fix it?
So we do give them construction money, but it's not like we give them construction money at the closing table. We give it to them in draws. So it's like a line of credit. So we want them to start the construction with their own capital first, and then we replenish their cash. So we reimburse them. So that's how we like to do it. So they come in, we give them 100% for construction. They begin the process. Let's say they put in the foundation, if it's a ground-up project. Our inspector goes out there, or now what they can do also, they can literally go on their phone. We have an application that they can download, take a few pictures. It creates a report for us. We see that they completed the work, and then we replenish their cash. So that is great for both sides, right? It's great for us because we're mitigating our risk, making sure that they're actually using that money for the construction and not just going to Vegas and blowing it all on the craps table.
Essentially, they're adding value, right?
Yeah.
As they add value to the property, that means our basis in the deal has even gotten safer and better. So as the property value increases, our loan to them is the same, right? And obviously, there's more equity in the deal. And also, us doing construction draws, them sending us the pictures or us going to the property, and we have the right to go to the property anytime and do an inspection. enables us to really manage the asset and know exactly how it's progressing, how it's moving along. Are they stuck? Where are they stuck? Why are they stuck? And a lot of times, look,
So
when
you
we were-
help them.
Exactly.
Yes.
When we were buying, selling, flipping, developing real estate, our hard money lender, who's actually a mentor to me today and a dear friend and also an investor in our fund, he guided us. He gave us so many, Yair, right?
Yeah.
He gave us so many contacts. He gave us so many expediters, all this good stuff, architects, to be able to continue our operation. So while we are a lender, we are not your partner, but indirectly we are.
I would say we are your partner, right? And I always tell this to all of our sales guys: you want to create value, you want to add value to all your borrowers.
Totally.
That's so important, right? Like if he's stuck with this project and maybe his GC, his contractor, just walked away from the project, find a contractor from. Like we have so many contracts in our database. Borrower comes to us and says, "Hey, I have so much cash that I'm sitting on. I want to buy a project." All right, but I can't find one. Like, all right, great. We have a network of wholesalers that we connect to our investors. So it's creating value, but I feel like we are their partner at the end of the day.
Indirectly.
Yeah.
Indirectly we are their I guess partner. We definitely add value, but
Cheaper
they are
source of partner.
Yeah, they're in full control of the deal. The deed is always in their name. Obviously, they own the entities that we lend to. So. Yeah, we're indirectly their partner, essentially.
But when they buy, you file right away the lien against
First
the property?
lien positions recorded.
Right away
yes,
until it's paid off.
automatically.
Similar to, I think, the solar panels, right?
I guess. Yeah,
I mean, it's similar to just like regular conventional loan,
but
right?
I think with solar panels, they'll even go subordinate, right? They'll go junior lien, so they'll be like a second position. I don't even know how they record. I've never even
Maybe
looked
they
into
just
that,
record a UCC. I think
they probably record a
UCC.
UCC similar to like how cash advance will do if they lend in. On
So
real
it
estate.
sounds like you guys go out on the field and check out every property that every investor buys. So you guys do like your own appraisal,
Correct.
and then you will do your own architectural also?
So our appraiser, so we choose the appraiser that goes out there to evaluate these properties. They are able to choose an architect of their choice, right? If they're building a ground up, if they're doing an expansion, whatever it is, they choose their own architect. But our underwriting team does require for us to see the plans and maybe even the permits as well, just to see what they're doing with the property, just to make sure that's up to code for us. But yeah, that we always have boots on the ground. So inspectors, appraisers, you name it, we have it.
I guess
How do you determine? I just remembered a case a few days ago that I referred to you guys. So getting a lot of calls, right? And
know who you're talking
so,
about. Is it the
so the
Williamsburg?
very first
Williamsburg.
call that we got, me and my husband get on a call, and my husband goes, not gonna happen. I'm like, I know it's not gonna happen, but we are like in two different locations. I'm getting my hair done. My husband is elsewhere. We are on three-way.
Power team.
And he goes, no. And I said, I know, no. But I could sense, like I could almost sense, like
You could taste
there
it.
is a father who probably directed the kid.
Yes.
He just graduated to become a doctor. He wants to borrow like $8 million. And I'm asking him questions in the first phone call. Like, you don't want to insult anyone.
Yes.
And I always teach my kids also, you really never know who is eventually will become your client. Never close the door with anyone, because you don't know when, at what time in your lifetime, if God sent a person to you, trust me, there is a plan. So when we got into this conversation, but I want to hear from you, how quickly did you kind of like...
I determined, I think within the first 30 seconds of the conversation, I was like, all right, this is not going to go anywhere. But going back to not knowing where these people are going to be in life, Grandpa would always tell us that.
Yeah.
Make sure you're always nice to everybody, no matter who it is. It could be the janitor, it could be
Yeah,
the waiter. You want to be nice to everyone.
Our grandfather, may his soul rest in peace, he would make sure that if we were eating anywhere in any restaurant or any paminki or anything to that effect, right, he would walk into the kitchen right before he would leave and thank every single person.
Wow.
Right? So he was that like grandfather that would take the mic
So it's in your
and
DNA.
thank everyone.
Yes.
That's nice.
He always instilled that into us to make sure that you just never know who you're sitting next to. You never know who's on the other line and
You don't know.
what they can do for you. And
You don't
But
know.
going back to that, right? With these, I don't want to say kids, but maybe their father does have a portfolio. I don't know, but
He does. If you
Yeah.
would speak with him, Solomon, trust me,
Yeah.
you could sense it by the language he speaks, how
Right.
he speaks, the tone. just certain terminology. Like you could sense that the kid is just about to start making money, and probably I feel like the father said, "Okay, I'll give you some money to go start. Go show me what you can do."
Yeah.
It's almost like that sense of feeling, right? And it's just amazing how over the phone call you could just get the person
Yeah.
figured out.
I sensed it right away. I mean, the type of questions that they were asking, what they were asking for, I can automatically tell that maybe this is their first deal that they're looking to purchase. So I think they're, I don't want to say getting ahead of themselves, but maybe in the beginning they are a bit.
I told him,
Yeah.
start small.
Yeah.
He called me a second time,
Yeah.
asking me for like other banks. And I said, may I ask you a very direct question now? Do you have your own money to lend? He said, no. I said, let me just make sure I understand you correctly. You called asking for money to borrow as a down payment because you want to borrow even more money on the other end.
He wanted
You
us to
understand?
fund the
So
down
he wanted-
payment. Is
yeah.
that what he wanted?
So he wanted to borrow the down payment
yeah.
to buy a $20 million building.
No, so we would never do that. I mean,
Yeah, no.
that is an outright no. We want to make sure that every single one of our borrowers is aligned with us, right? We want to make sure that they're always putting, skin of the game, as they
Right.
would say. And that skin of the game, that alignment really is what makes us feel comfortable and sleep at night.
Right.
Because we know that if they've put, a significant amount down, we have equity in the deal.
Right.
We're comfortable, right?
Right.
We know that they have a lot of interest, their blood, sweat, and tears in it. So yeah, some of them are saying, well, I'm going to put equity, right? My sweat equity into the deal. I'm going to be running around. It's great, but that's not enough for us, right? We want to
Right.
make sure that you put your own cash behind it because that's what you expect us to do
What's
when
the
we
minimum?
originate the loan.
What's the minimum?
Even our superstar borrowers have a requirement
have
to
to
put
have,
down.
yeah.
So
They have to
the minimum is 10%.
Mm-hmm.
For a first-time investor, they're able to put 20% down.
Mm-hmm.
But also, we limit them on the asset classes that they're able to borrow from us, right? So if it's a first-time investor, we're limiting them to the 1 to 4 unit properties
Correct.
that they can purchase because the exit strategy for a 1 to 4 unit is a lot easier than an exit strategy on a multifamily, an exit strategy on a condo building, exit strategy on a mixed-use building. On the 1 to 4s, it's super easy, right? You do the work, you complete the construction, you put it on the market, and you sell it, right? To an end user.
Hopefully they have a good broker.
Hopefully, you have a broker like yourself that'll be able to sell it for them.
Right.
As opposed to a multifamily, what happens with the multifamily is a lot of times what people do is they don't trade these multifamily properties. They don't sell these multifamily properties.
They keep them.
They keep them. So they want to hold on to it. So they go to an agency lender, a lender that is doing these large loans
And
to
they
be able to refinance them out. These people that don't have experience in these multifamily properties are not going to fit the guidelines of these agency lenders. So we also think about mitigating risk again, right? Is making sure that, hey, we want to make sure that if they do have an exit strategy, it's a clear exit strategy and they're actually able to execute on their exit strategy. So if it's someone that's coming in with no experience, they're looking to buy a property in Williamsburg, a 20 unit for $20 million. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I could. Can we lend it out? Absolutely. But do we want to? No, because we know tomorrow they're going to get stuck in the property.
Right.
Also, if we were a loan-to-own shop, we probably would lend to them and just take over the
So
asset.
they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
We're not in the
So
business
you
of
could
that.
take
Yeah.
over.
You know,
Exactly.
what we like about our business that we're so proud of is the fact that every time we make a loan, our borrowers call us and they thank us. Right? We're in a business where our borrowers know who we are. I have a very big sukkah party in my house once a year. Right? God bless my wife who allows me to do all this stuff at my home. But I have a very big sukkah party in my house, and this last sukkah party we had about 160 people, give or take, in my house. Really tight. But we did it, right? And a lot of the people that were there were our borrowers, our clients. And I want to be able to welcome them. I want them to be in my home. I want them to meet my kids. I want them to meet my wife. We go on vacations together and so on. And the reason why we're able to do that is because we provide them the service and the quality that a lender should be providing to their client.
I flew out to Brazil for a client's,
That's right.
for a
Wow.
client's
That's right.
wedding. That was fun.
This was good.
And we became friends. For us, and this stems back to our roots with our grandparents, our parents. I mean, just the region that we come from is very, being warm and being nice and just having a good
Humble,
relationship. Yeah, and being humble. I think that's huge too. I don't think there's anyone out there that can say that, we are anything but that.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, we don't know. Actually, we don't
We
know.
work hard on that, to make sure
Yeah.
that we provide that humility that we were born and raised with, from our parents, from our grandparents and our families.
Yeah.
Ruben, you touched upon something very unique. First of all, shout out to your wife.
Yes,
I have never met your wife,
you will soon.
but God willing.
Make sure they're at the next sukkah party.
That's true.
But I have to honestly tell you, behind every successful woman, there should be a good bone of a good man
Right.
who stands behind and keeps pushing.
Yeah.
You know, like my husband, every time I go out, like even today, getting through my closet, do I wear this? Is this going to look right? And he's like my, go-to. And I'm like, listen, don't complain. I don't have a person that does my hair, makeup, and dresses me up yet. He goes, no way. I'm like, it's coming soon. Be prepared.
Start saving now.
Yes, I know. But going back to your wife, I really want to say thank you to your wife.
Yes,
Because
I do too.
I remember when you mentioned that she was pregnant with the second baby
yeah.
when you started
My
this
heart.
business.
Yeah.
And for a woman really to have the same vision and start from ground zero, nothing,
Yeah.
and build this baby together, this is where I would come in, right, and say, wow, this is a woman.
It is. It is.
Because we spoke about it right before we started, right? I shared some of my personal
Yeah.
points that girls now, they want it now. They have no patience. They want instant gratification.
Right.
And they just don't want to put in with their man the work.
Yeah.
And I think that's where they lose that taste, that sauce, right?
It's
When
hard.
everything is given to you.
Right. Right.
When you didn't do it yourself, when you didn't earn it, like if someone just dropped $100 million on my head and said, baby, go do whatever you want, I want to know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go through the footprints and the platform to get there knowing exactly what to do and where we started and how do we now use and spend and enjoy this.
Right.
But the fact that your wife went through this blood and tears and the pain, and I'm sure that you came home and you're not in a good mood, and she lets you go travel and go through this ups and downs.
I'm about to cry. I gotta say, God.
Praise her. Now's
God,
the time.
I will, because, I think she deserves it. God loves me, and God loves me in so many ways because, I have, of course, health. I have an amazing family. My brother, my sister, my late father, my mother. I have amazing cousins who are now my partners in life, not only in business, but most importantly, He gifted me my wife, my heart, my soul, my everything. And I think that, to your point, just like any other woman needs to have a great man behind her, I think every great man also needs to have a great woman behind him.
100%.
And I think that, today, a lot of the things that we have succeeded in at Wieland is because she was always supportive. She was not only supportive at Wieland, she was also supportive while I was in law school.
Wow.
I was day and night in the library, and I'm very meticulous. I have crazy OCD when it comes down to making sure I'm prepared for an exam or for a paper that I have to do. And they always laugh at me for it. I over prepare, right? So I would sit in the library. At times for 12 to 16 hours a day.
And mind you, this is a child that quit high school.
Oh yeah. That's a whole separate story. But yeah, I quit high school, but I ended up learning and realizing how
Amazing.
important education is. But none of this could be true or come into fruition without the amazing support system that God has blessed me with through my family, my cousins, my partners, my brothers, and of course my wife.
How long you married?
Gonna be 10 years in May.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've been
It's amazing.
on a
how
very
time
long
flies.
10 years route.
Yeah.
I think one day I want to create a very nice get-together and really showcase to many of our youth that is right now going through this time where they deciding, do I get married or do I start my business?
Right.
That's a very
I
good
didn't say a thing.
question.
I didn't say a thing, Solid. Yeah, I didn't say anything.
But I think it's something that a lot of our generation nowadays is struggling, right? And it's because my son always tells me, Mom, stop wishing
Right.
they don't exist. And I tell him, yes, they do.
They do exist.
Keep looking.
Exactly.
Because
Just look in the right places.
the best
in my opinion.
diamonds are not
They're not.
just given to you like that.
Right.
The best diamonds, you have to really go in the right place at the right time and keep digging until you find what you will feel with your heart, with your
Right.
soul, and your mind, that yes, that's the person I want to share the rest of my life with.
Yeah.
And to me, this is very deep, because if you acquired millions and millions of dollars and now you're super successful, but then she blew it all up, what was the purpose of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Right? It's a big problem.
No, I agree with you. I share that sentiment in the fact that, look, you don't want to rush into marriage.
No.
There's no doubt about
And
it.
no settling too.
100%. Look, when I first date, I took out my wife. I told her I'm going to marry you, and she was like, yeah, right. But at the end of the day, that's exactly what ended up happening, right? Like almost a year later,
How did you know?
we were married. There was something about her. There was something, the way in which she carried herself, the way in which she spoke. I mean, I'm a little crazy. I have a lot of energy, and I'm always thinking, I'm always doing, I'm always running around, I'm always flying around. And she's the complete opposite. She's cool, calm, collected.
Like Tony Robbins' wife.
The yin and the yang.
She
Opposite.
is.
Yes,
She is the
correct.
complete opposite of me,
Yes.
right? And
Very
the
important.
moment I saw that, I was like, all right, she can kind of calm me
Two
down.
crazies cannot be in the same place.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a fire.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think he knows.
Wow, this is really amazing that you're sharing this, because I think this is going to be going from the business into personal. To me, I feel like this is significant when a man is at peace at home.
Right.
And if a man is not at peace at home, then he brings this mess to work.
Oh yeah.
And then affects your books and your finances and the people you manage and the energy, right? We spoke about the energy, that people will sense your energy, and then it's going to crash.
100%.
No matter how much you're going to push it.
It's not a productive
It's going to eventually crash.
Yeah.
And to me, this is super important for, everyone that I come together with, everybody that I am surrounded by, to make sure that we have very good energy together. Because if we are not at peace collectively on a personal level at home first, then we can never produce anything successful when it comes to business. So I do want to say thank you to your wife
Same.
for being a good person that I'm sure built this together with you. And Solomon, I wish you all the best, because I know that you are in the completely opposite side of the ocean, right?
We're gonna get him. We're gonna get him to our side of the ocean
And we're
very
gonna
soon.
get
So I
him.
mean, since we're on Bukharski, Tosu Plaza,
Oh
they
my
say,
God.
I mean, if there's any good,
You don't need to do this.
both Moses and Solomon, I have to plug it in. I mean, we have this huge audience here.
I know, you never know.
Both Moses and Solomon are great guys. I can personally guarantee for them. So
Thanks. I
so
appreciate the
don't mean to
personal
make you-
guarantee.
I don't mean to make you blush here, but great guys.
Listen,
Yeah,
it
I'll
takes a
sum it
lot
up
to
that
have a good person come from a very good environment.
Right.
And someone who runs a good, successful business
Yeah.
will also figure out how to run a good, successful home,
Oh yeah,
children,
yeah,
and life,
Yeah.
right? And then finances, and build it to the next level.
Oh, yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about children,
Sure.
right? Because I think they are the future of what we're creating right now. Because my son always reminds me, Mom, I don't want you to think you're going to live for another 100 years.
God willing.
Eventually,
God
one day
willing, with
you're going to...
AI and all this technology and stuff like that, you never know.
Common.
But, yes, it's coming. But do we really want to live that long? I don't know.
Right.
But really going back to, how much do you invest
Yeah.
into your self-care,
Right.
right? And is that affecting also the team that you're running?
Right.
Are they part of this culture?
So I think self-care, you've done a huge transformation
Yeah.
on that front, right? I mean, you could probably speak for days on that. But I think you're right. Look, you not only have to take care of yourself physically, but mentally as well, right? I always have a book by my bed. I'm always reading something. I'm always developing on something. I'm always watching a YouTube video, researching something, always some type of stimulant for your
brain going.
Right, exactly. That's critical. But also physically, you have to take care of yourself, right? I think that's also very important. I go to the gym consistently. I try, right? I make sure that I do my best to get enough sleep. I don't get enough sleep though. I think
How many hours is it?
usually between 5 and 6.
That's not good.
It's not good at all. I
You
know,
need
but
7 to 8.
I tried lately. I carry these Fitbit everywhere with me, right? So, believe it or not, I actually use this Fitbit more than I use this Rolex. But nevertheless, this Fitbit I think it just brings so much value, and it's $99. But I make sure to track my sleep, and I've been on the incline. I've been getting a little bit more sleep lately than ever before, and that's really because he's been transforming in that front, right? Like he had completely transformed his physical, appearance, his mindset. I'm sure you can probably speak a bit more about that as well.
I think the physical part is
Important.
one of the most important parts, right? Like training, doing physical training. So I do weightlifting. I also do Muay Thai. I train twice a week.
Yeah.
I probably should be training a lot more. I actually was in Muay Thai this morning. I feel amazing. I go in the morning class. I'm there by like 7 in the morning. I have my class for an hour. Then I have my whole other routine with drinking.
Your drinks, yeah.
I drink colostrum. It's everything that's good for you, right? And
He's put me on too. So I started drinking all these things, and my live-in now started drinking them too.
Oh, no way.
So yeah,
that's pretty expensive.
It is. She's great.
This is great.
So like everything starts within, right? Like
Right.
your physical health is one of the most important. And then you have your mental health, right?
Correct.
Your mental stimulants. The food for your brain is reading, is knowledge, right? Like
Right.
At one point, I don't know, I myself all right, I need to sit down. I want to read. I need to do this because you feel like your brain is hungry for more information.
Correct.
So it's always important. So yeah, for me, physical was first. And then after that also is the mental stimulant, but also spiritual, I think, is also very important.
But I think spiritual is very important.
Very
That I
important.
agree with you on. But I think one of the things that we do at WeLend is we have a coach, right? I think from
So is this coach for everyone in the?
so it's for the
in
three of us.
Wayland?
It's for the three of us.
three of us.
We
Okay.
actually just hired
Yeah,
a
we just
sales
hired a
coach
sales
as well.
coach, yeah.
She's probably, I don't know when she started.
She's starting March
Probably not.
1st, so
March
she's going to
1st.
be coming in for all the salespeople.
We have a coach, one for the executives, right? Myself, Solomon, and Moses. We make sure that, and this coach, I caution everyone on a coach because one, it's very important, but two, the right coach is even more important, right?
Right.
Because we were
You don't want to get bored.
We were very lucky in getting a coach who actually ran a private lender like ourselves. He was the CEO of a private lender who was doing, I think, about $5 billion on an annualized basis, right? That's almost $400-500 million a month in originations. He's retired. We were lucky enough to be able to get him to now coach us. And I think that is very important because, while you and I may be sitting and thinking, okay, we need to do X, Y, and Z, but we're so, I guess, rooted at the problems, at the issues that we're not seeing the other lens, right? And having the right coach who can really take a 1,000-foot view and give you the right guidance because not only do they see it from a different perspective, but they've actually experienced
Exactly.
it.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, they've experienced it. They've done it. They've seen it. They'll say, hey, look, this is a money grab. You shouldn't go here. Hey, this is going to be a waste of time. You shouldn't go here. Go do this. And the three of us, me, you, and Moses, would be like, wait, we really thought it was either one or two. You're telling us to go the third option.
Yeah.
We didn't even consider it. And you would be surprised as to how much that will change and pivot you into the right direction. So I think that's something that you and I were talking about in the fact that the Baharian community is kind of missing that.
Yes.
In
The
sense
support
that-
system.
Yes.
Yeah, like, I tell some of my dear friends who are also running very successful businesses about, what we do and how much we pay this coach. And they're like, you're crazy. I don't want to say exactly what they say, the Russian verbiage, but they say, you're crazy. And the reason why is because they just, I don't know, maybe they just don't know what it is. But I think what got us, and I hope that this maybe will really kind of reign true with everyone else, is that we are a different form of an athlete. As a CEO, as an executive of running a big company, you are a sense of an athlete. And every athlete, if you look
Has
at the
a
Super Bowl,
coach.
has a coach.
Right.
Why can't we? And why shouldn't we? Yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but you'll double it. You triple it over
It's an
time
investment.
if you have a long-term vision, right?
It's always pays back.
So when someone said that to me, and I read that in a book that about coaching and having to get a coach and the value of it, it hit me, right? And that's when I was on a hunt, and I remember calling you and Moses saying, we need to get a coach, and we went on a hunt to find a coach. And fortunately, God, like I said, loves us and gave us this amazing coach.
You also mentioned something that was very important to me. It seems like you guys are running your operation in a very similar style of coaching that I've been part of for many, many years. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but it's a very, very popular company. It's called Buffini and Company. And they are very big in the real estate community world. They are based actually in Carlsbad, California. And it's a it's a coaching company that came once to New York. I will never forget that day. one of my colleagues in the office, they said, Olga, do you know who's coming to New York? You're so into all this. This was just right when I left Century 21 to go work with Douglas Elliman. And I said, no, who is it? I know of all the big names. And she's like, it's Brian Buffini. And I said, what does he do? And she goes, he's going to teach you how to run your business by referrals. I'm like, huh? I used to run my business for sell by owners, expires. Back in the days, we would drive by, signs outside for sell by owner. It was just hit and run operation kind of style. And I would just wake up every morning and look for leads, right?
Yeah.
This was all I did. One morning, I remember I woke up and I was like, I wish that one day I could just go to the house and I have something in my hands that I could just look up property records and know the size and all the other history. And look, boom, 20 years later, now we have it in our fingertips, right? Everything we wish one day just comes into fruition. We just have to wish for it. But going backwards into the coaching, I went to his event. I remember it was a lot of people from New York City that attended. And I will never forget, I had my arms crossed and my legs crossed, and my husband is sitting next to me, and I'm listening to him and just going like
You're
that.
in defense.
What are you going to teach me, young man, that I don't already know in this business? And by the time it was lunch hour, by 1 o'clock, I went loose. I opened up. I said, wait a second.
This
Gotta
guy's
hear
onto
him out.
something, yeah.
And maybe out of hundreds of people, only few started to sign up during lunch. And I started to go to signing up table. And my husband is behind me. He's like, are you crazy? It's $6,000.
He wasn't sold
And
yet.
I looked at him and I said, I don't care.
Right.
He goes,
$6,000 a month.
a year.
A year. Okay, that's not
You made that decision without talking to me. And I said, you don't understand. Something just clicked
Right.
in my brain. Because if I paid him 6, I could bring you back 60. I promise you that. Just let me do this. And let me tell you, I never looked back.
Right.
This man, until today, is on my payroll
I love it.
every year.
awesome.
And I told my kids, let me tell you something. I will cut down on a lot of goodies at Shabbat table,
Right.
but I will never cut down my coach.
Right.
Because when I go up, he's there with me. And when I go down, he's there with me. And when I go through my ups and downs, he's there with me. And just to tell you the truth, he's the one that keeps telling me, stay focused on the baby that's feeding you, which is real estate.
Right.
And so wouldn't he keep bringing me back to say, stay focused on real estate game, because don't forget, this real estate game is what pays for all your great stuff that you will like to do nowadays, which is recording and paying for everything else that I do nowadays.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you to my coach and the person that really leads me and just keeps my focus going.
Yeah.
Hey,
Laser
don't focus
Yeah.
on the other great stuff. Like, you want to do things in the community. You want to become this Mother Teresa. You want to just give. But stay focused. Who's
Right.
paying for it?
No, I love it. I share the same sentiment in the sense that a coach is critical.
Right.
And I think that's the number one problem in our community, is that people don't want to pay for the guidance that these coaches can provide.
Absolutely. Well, it's been my pleasure. It's been such a privilege. I had
here.
so much fun with both of you. You guys are amazing asset to our community.
Thank you.
I think that this was the main goal, is I wanted to bring you and to really showcase to our community, to our folks, that you do exist, because there's a lot of youngsters that are sitting around thinking, how do I start? If I don't have the money, where do I begin? But I really think that we need to have some sort of a book written with beginners 101,
Yeah, right.
the manual. Maybe that's the next chapter of our, creativity. How does one become an investor?
Right.
And teaching young generation how to start.
Right.
And it's been my privilege again.
Same
And
here.
I want to say thank you guys very much for being here today with me, spending this time, sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom. I think you guys are priceless. And I think a lot of young people must watch this episode because they're going to get a lot out of this.
Sure they will. And we want to personally thank you, your husband, your sons. I don't know your other son, but
You'll get to meet
knowing
him.
you, I really kind of get to know him.
Yes.
But also our friend Gabriel,
Thank you.
for putting all this together.
Yes.
The team at Kaikov Media for putting all this together. and our dear, dear Leslie at our office, who is our heart and soul for always working tirelessly, even right now.
Yes. So before we wrap up, I just want to mention to everyone, we were live today
Right.
on Bukharians Also Cry.
Yeah.
We were live today on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
We were live today on your Instagram
Right,
channel.
right.
And so there will be no excuses for people not to know who
So many
We Land
platforms.
is. It's a nationwide private lending company that is now growing and exposing themselves into a lot of great opportunities. Thank you guys so
Thank
much
you.
for being
Thank you
here
so much.
today.
It was a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Woo!
That was great.
It was good.
Awesome.